Welcome back to Thirukkural a Day, Chapter 4, Kural 10. Virtue sums the things. Seyarpala thorum arane oruvarku uyarpala thorum pali. That is virtue which each ought to do, and that is vice which each should shun. Questions for you. What are the most important values that guide your decisions and actions? How can you create a life that is aligned with your principles and contributes to the greater good? The fire burned low, its embers glowing like dying stars. Outside, the jungle hummed with life, indifferent to the storm raging within Rajamani, Caspian and Mali. Rajamani broke the silence. There is a way. Caspian looked up sharply. A way that doesn't end in disaster? Rajamani didn't answer immediately. He reached for a bowl of water, staring into its still surface before speaking. The sickness is here. If we take it to the world, we risk an outbreak. He set the bowl down. But if I stay, I can ensure it dies here before anyone else comes looking. Mali frowned. What stops others from finding this place later? Rajamani's gaze was steady. You. Caspian's breath hitched. You want us to go back and lie? Not lie, Rajamani corrected, but bury the truth deep enough that no one comes searching. He turned to Mali. You are the only one who understands this sickness. If you return and warn of an untreatable disease on this island, no one will dare approach. Mali hesitated, then nodded. A quarantine? Rajamani met Caspian's eyes. And you? You tell the world about the ecological threat, not about the chamber, not about the island, but about the lesson we found here. Make them listen, make them change. Caspian's hands curled into fists. And you just stay behind, alone? Rajamani smiled. Not alone. The islanders are my people now. He placed a hand on Caspian's shoulder. This is a path of virtue. Each must do what is right and avoid what brings harm. Seyarpala thorum arane oruvarku uyarpala thorum pali. That is virtue which each ought to do, and that is vice within which each should shun. Caspian swallowed hard. I don't like it. You don't have to, Rajamani said gently. You only have to accept it. The next morning, the tide was high, the wind carrying the scent of salt and distant shores. The crew, weak but recovering, boarded the ship. Mali stood at the rail, eyes flickering back toward the island. Caspian hesitated at the gangplank. He turned one last time. If you ever change your mind, Rajamani smiled. I won't. The island grew smaller behind them, until it was nothing more than a dark shape on the horizon. Back on the island, Rajamani had no time to dwell on goodbyes. The islanders were still sick, their fevers raging. He knew the cure lay in the ancient texts, in the wisdom buried beneath centuries of dust. He pored over Mali's notes, tracing each symbol, piecing together the knowledge of a civilization long lost. Then he found it. The answer had been there all along, not a single antidote, but a method. The civilization had devised a way to strengthen the body's resistance using a mixture of herbs, isolation, and time. The island already had everything they needed. Rajamani called upon the elders, the healers, the strongest among them. We will not let this sickness take us, he declared. We have the knowledge to fight it. With careful hands, they gathered the bitter roots, brewed the fermented leaves, followed the precise rituals laid out in the archives. The first few days were the worst. Fevers raged, bodies trembled, hope wavered. But slowly the tide turned. Strength returned to weary limbs. By the seventh sunrise, the islanders stood once more. Rajamani watched as life returned. The sound of children laughing, of waves lapping at the shore, of stories whispered under the stars. The sickness had passed. The island had survived. He walked to the cliffs, gazing out at the endless horizon. Somewhere out there, Caspian was fighting a different battle. one to make the world listen before it was too late. The world would move on, never knowing the sacrifice that had been made for it. Rajamani closed his eyes, breathing in the salt air. The island was safe, the world had been warned, and virtue, as always, had found its way.